You're listening to the Swap Society podcast, and I'm your host, Nicole Robertson. I interview thought leaders and change makers who are working to create a more sustainable and equitable world through fashion, art, and activism. Join us for a dose of climate optimism as we envision a brighter future. Hey everyone, welcome to the Swap Society podcast. Today I'm talking with Sarah Mattis. Sarah is the founder of Deco Denim. Welcome to the show, Sarah.
Thanks so much for having me, Nicole. I'm so excited to be here. First ever interview. You are, yeah. So
I'm honored.
Yeah.
So where are you talking to us from today, and where are you from originally?
Yeah, I'm in San Francisco, California. I grew up in the Bay Area, but I have lived in San Francisco now for 21 years.
You are the founder of Deco Denim. Tell us about your brand.
Yeah, so Deco Denim, I just officially launched at the very end of this past December. Deco Denim is a sustainable, gender fluid, size inclusive brand that does accessories as well as clothing. I have been a denim designer for many years now. And it's something I'm extremely passionate about. So yeah, Deco Denim is kind of the realization of all those hard working years that I spent in the fashion industry, and being able to realize it on my own is something that I am really excited about.
How did you get into the denim industry? How did you get your start?
I went to college at the Academy of Art University here in San Francisco, got my bachelor degree in fashion design, did a really quick stint interning at Lamb in New York. And then when I graduated, it was like, it's hard to be a designer in San Francisco because you basically have a very few companies to go to. You've got Levi's, Old Navy, Gymboree, and those are like the big ones. In 2008, when I was trying to get a gig, it was the height of the recession. I ended up working at, of all places, Nordstrom, because I couldn't find a design job to save my life. And 8 months later, after moving on from that to working quick stints at Old Navy and Gymboree temping, I got an interview at Levi's. And I interviewed there, like immediately clicked with the designer and the senior designer, and I got the gig. Which is honestly very lucky 8 months after graduating, getting a gig like that, because it's hard. The joke is that Levi's is like Fort Knox, it's like extremely difficult to get in. And once you get in, it's like people either become lifers or they jump from company to company to kind of level up, because it's also very hard to move up. So I was at Levi's for 4.5 years. I was part of the Signature and Denizen brand of Levi's, which is like the value channel of Levi's. And it was exciting and it was amazing until it wasn't. I had a lot of responsibilities there. My boss really empowered me to kind of like act as if I was a designer, not just an assistant designer. So doing everything from like shade reviews and helping to choose fabrics and the overall designing, being a part of fittings and making comments, and every single thing I had my hand in, which was amazing. But a lot of politics, as it would turn out, a certain level of like toxic environment. Like it was just something I couldn't handle anymore. So I left. I left without anything backing me up, which is just never advised when you when you leave a job, but like it had to happen. Then I was like, what am I going to do? And I interviewed at a bunch of places. I got an offer in New York, but they weren't going to like pay for anything as far as like moving expenses and stuff like that. And my partner is out here, so I was like, I don't know. And then I was going to go interview and be flown up to Seattle. And I ended up reaching out to this startup called Gustin, and they had just done this like amazingly huge Kickstarter. It was like over $400,000 that they got in this Kickstarter. And I was just like, hey, this is me. This is my experience. Let's talk. And so I spoke to the two founders, and they're like, yeah, I don't know. We're not like really at that point yet where we can bring someone on. So I let some time go by, and then I reached out to them again and was like, hey, me again. How about I work for you for 2 weeks for free? And let's just like see what happens. They're like, okay. And can't turn down free labor, especially when someone is like, offering it up, right? So they took me on, and then I stayed there for 3.5 years. I managed the production, did designing as well, and wrote copy for like email campaigns for the products that went out. That was a lot of fun because it was the complete opposite of Levi's. It was like very much like if I thought I was wearing many hats at Levi's, I was wearing all the hats when I was there. Yeah. And I liked their business model, which was, it's crowdfunded. You pay up front and then the thing gets made. I really loved that from a sustainability aspect, not overproducing. It's like the definition of slow fashion. So yeah, I was there for 3.5 years, and then got laid off and was like, I'm burnt out from fashion. Tried my hand at some project management for a hot minute. Then that company went under and I got laid off. And so I did some leather work. And I tried my hand at leather working. And then the pandemic hit. I was like, okay, now what am I gonna do? And I made mask necklaces for the beginning of the pandemic. Was like, I'm gonna do jewelry now. And then I was like, my boyfriend had been pushing me forever and was like, I need some new jeans. Like, I need some new jeans, I need some new clothes, and start a company, and I was like, yeah, like it's that easy, Yeah, and he's like, well, you've got the connections, and I was like, I don't have the money, Long story long, how Deco Denim came to be was I was passionate about what I wanted to do, and I started talking about it with people, and people started saying, well, I'm going to invest. And I was like, what? For real? Like, and they're like, yeah, do it. And I was like, oh my God. And I was like, what is this? Like, what life is this? Like, how, But I was like, cool. So it's how I've been able to do what I've been doing for the last 2 years. And I'm extremely grateful. I am so thrilled. It's been hard as it would turn out. Like really, really hard. And yeah. Sorry. So that is
I feel that. I mean, I'm doing something very different, but it is also very, very hard. And I feel you there 100%. And I love that you've taken your passion and you're making it happen. And that's so exciting. So let's talk about denim just for a moment and what's not sustainable about it and ways that it can be more sustainable and how you're tackling that in your business.
Yeah. So denim is a beautiful, beautiful fabric in that it is extremely durable. It can last a really long time if you take care of it properly. I'm using 100% cotton selvage denim that is the cotton is grown in the US. the denim is made in the US, and I'm going to keep it raw, meaning that it's not going to be washed. There's not going to be any processing. So that's eliminating any excess water. There's already water needed in the creation of the denim, but like nothing in addition. And the reason behind that is not just from an excess use of water standpoint, but it's the patience that comes with creating your own personal wear pattern. You see whiskering or hand sanding on jeans, and it doesn't look authentic to like the body that is wearing them oftentimes. And doing it raw, sure, it takes some time. It takes a little bit of love. It takes a little bit of, sometimes it's uncomfortable at the beginning. But in the end, what it breaks into is something that is just so gorgeous. And so again, that's another kind of like slow fashion kind of process. And so to answer your question, sure, there is a lot of denim out there that's not sustainable. And we're talking the high stretch that is and can be extremely comfortable. I get it. But after the cotton breaks down, well into the future, you're left with a bunch of plastic yarns that aren't, basically. And so my commitment to sustainability is to offer denim that has no more than 10% poly or elastane in it, like total. Part of that reasoning is I'm going to be offering plus in the future. Stretch is something that is going to be needed. And I realize that. And there's going to be some people that just aren't into 100% cotton. But in order for me, in my partnership with Cotton Incorporated, their initiative, Blue Jeans Go Green, you have to, whatever you give them, has to be no more than 10% of a man-made like material. And they go ahead and turn the excess like fabric or jeans, jackets, clothing, whatever, and they turn it into insulation that is used for Habitat for Humanity. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a dual purpose of why it's like I really don't want to offer anything more than 10%, but also like in order to partner with them, I need to abide by that. So yeah, I hope that kind of answers your question.
Yeah. So you mentioned water usage, and, I'm aware that denim is very thirsty in terms of just growing cotton for anything. It takes a lot of water. Stats that are kind of floating around that we often mention is that it takes about 1,800 gallons to make a single pair of jeans. Can you break that down for us a little bit? I know a lot of it is from the finishing. How much of that do you think is from the growing of the cotton versus from, the different finishing and washes?
Yeah, that's a really, really great question. I would love to be able to see those numbers and how they relate to, because obviously any type of crop is going to take water, and cotton is no different. The amount of water, however, that it takes to process is actually it's a good amount of water, because there's two different types of processing. There's a wet processing and there's a dry process. And even when you dry process, you're still going to end up having to wash the garment usually afterwards. I would say that I don't know, like half maybe, and that's just a guess.
Even that is helpful, because I've often wondered that. It's like I read these stats that it takes 1,800 gallons for one pair of jeans, and then it's like, okay, well, Yeah, what is the breakdown? And I don't know if that information is really out there, but even just you having a denim brand and working with denim for so long, just feeling like that it's probably about half. I feel like that's a good way to wrap my brain around it a little bit. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think a lot of mills are, at least ways in the creation of like the weaving of denim and whatnot. I know that they're really trying to recycle a lot of their water.
Hmm.
So, I imagine that, there's got to be some sort of science that they've figured out, because ultimately at the same time they don't want to spend a whole lot on water either, right? Like they're going to try and use as much and as little as possible,
Hmm.
as much to like make sure that the crop grows, but as little as possible. So that's something I'm going to look into. You've put something in my head. I was like, I should know the answer to that.
If you find out, please let us know because
Yeah.
it would be interesting. I think there are some brands out there that really try to break down, the water usage information a little bit, but yeah, there's a lot of I don't know. Sometimes these estimates too, you have to wonder, how accurate they are. I mean, I think everybody's just doing their best to try to give a general sense of, what these numbers are so that, people and brands can make better choices. You talked about the fact that you don't finish your denim, that it's kind of that raw denim. So then it must be a really dark denim color, right? Because I've heard that that really is just the most sustainable thing to do is to just wear really, really dark denim and then, let it wear out over time on its own.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think the average lifespan of denim should be if we really just got a pair of really well made jeans like what you're creating and kind of kept them forever? How long should that pair of jeans last if they're being worn regularly?
Yeah. That's an amazing question. Because, you know, with raw denim too, like in the kind of the selvage raw denim community, it's really about wearing them as long as you possibly can without even washing them, first off. And the reason behind that is, especially when you first get them, you're going to want to wear them, I say, for at least 6 months. And it's not just like, okay, just throw them in the wash and put it on hot. No, ideally, in an ideal world, and I know this isn't going to be for everyone, but in an ideal world, you are going to lay them in your bathtub inside out and cold soak them. That's going to get with obviously some detergent, a nice gentle detergent, and that's going to get a lot of the dirt, and nastiness out that has come to be over 6 months. But it's also um, going to reveal these wear patterns that you've chipped away at with the indigo kind of in that wear. Like it just kind of like disappears, and then you get a lighter blue that kind of comes through in those places like the back of the knee and the whiskers, at your fly. And so that would be ideal, doing something like that, and then hang drying. No dryer ever, ever, ever. What you do when you put jeans in the dryer is you are slowly breaking down that cotton, and the thread and all of those high pressure points, like the crotch seam and stuff like that. Like you're just kind of deteriorating, and breaking down, and it's not as durable when you use the dryer. So hang dry. If you're not going to be able to soak them, put them inside out on cold in the washer. And don't overload the washer because you're going to get weird creases in your jeans. Stuff like that. Doing things like that, you are going to be able to make your jeans last for a really long time. If you wear your jeans every single day, and let's say you work at a desk like a lot of people do, I'm just going to use that as an example because it's kind of like what I do. Then you can make those jeans last for like years and years and years. If you have like a few in rotation, let's say, you could easily make three last for 10, 15 years, just with taking good care of them. I mean, look at the vintage finds that we can, get our hands on these days, like beautiful old school Levi's and Wranglers that are easily from like the 60s, 70s. Like, those were worn a bunch and they probably weren't even following my exact, care, but then they've sat for years and years and years, right? So it's not like they were worn every day since like the 60s and 70s, but
right.
so there is longevity in denim for sure. And I'm being conservative, I think, with my numbers, because I realize that every person's type of wear is different. There are people that are a little more physical, in their jeans, and that's just going to be a little more difficult to maintain a pair of jeans. But yeah, a long time. It's a very durable fabric.
So to recap, don't use the wash machine or the dryer. Turn them inside out and cold soak them in a bathtub with gentle detergent. How long should you cold soak those jeans for in the bathtub?
I honestly would at least an hour.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe two, and like kind of going in with your hands, doing a little tap, tap, tap all along to try and get out all of that dirt. Some people don't have bathtubs. I get it, but just don't overfill the washing machine. You can totally do it in the washing machine on cold. I'm just a little more particular.
Like on a delicate cycle, then, if you're going to put them in the wash machine. And then after you soak them with the detergent, I'm assuming you want to give them a really good rinse, right? To get all of the soap out. And then you hang them to dry. What do you think about people that recommend putting your jeans in the freezer for people that aren't washing very much?
It's an old wives' tale. It's a myth. It really doesn't. The idea was, in doing that, you are somehow eliminating the bacteria ultimately that causes odor. And it's just not true. All you're doing is just kind of like freezing the bacteria for a little bit. But the second they warm back up, you're back to square one. So if you've gotten to the point where you're like, oh, I need to put them in the freezer because they stink, it's time to wash them.
Sure. And then what about, people that spill something on them? Would you just recommend spot cleaning them then?
I would. It's there's a fine line. It depends on what was spilled, because like certain things you have to be a little more, rigorous with trying to get out. And the problem with like raw denim, if they haven't been washed yet, let's say, and it's something you got to get out real hard, you could end up creating a spot because you're ultimately rubbing off the indigo at the same time. And so, yeah, it depends. I would say it depends. You might, if it's something a little more tricky, then it might be a wash day.
Sure. Okay, so let me tip my camera down here for a second. I am wearing this swapped Levi's, as you can probably tell, denim jacket. And so you're an expert. I have to ask, because I've been curious. Hold on, let me take this off for a second. So I got it secondhand. And I kind of waited a long time. I really wanted a denim jacket. I hadn't had one for a while, and I really wanted to find one secondhand. And I looked at some thrift shops, but hadn't really found one that was the right one. People had swapped some, but it wasn't like the right one. And then I felt like this Levi's one was kind of like, oh my gosh, I found the jacket. But it is, and I don't wash it very often, but I haven't done the cold soak thing, but it is starting to kind of get this like ring
Yeah.
around the collar. What do you recommend for something like that? Do you just, I don't mind fading, but and I don't know if you can see that, but it feels more like it looks
It's
dirty. I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's like oils and product probably from like your hair, and then ultimately it just kind of like picks up a little bit of dirt, like
Yeah.
whatever is in the atmosphere. And with something like that, you know, if you're trying not to wash it, I think that's something that you could easily just kind of like do with a cotton cloth and maybe a tiny little bit of soap, and then water to get all the soap off is something you could try.
Mhm.
Um, or when it's time to wash, just make sure to kind of like spot treat the area with some sort of like, I don't know, oxy
Okay.
kind of, yeah. Or even like try baking soda as well.
Okay.
Yeah. But I want to add, sorry, I just want to intervene real quick in that I love the idea of swap society. And
Thank you.
I'm gonna definitely, I did a deep dive, but I need to do a deeper deep dive to really check it out and sign up. And I really think it's a really cool idea to make
Thank
sure
you.
that we're making things last and giving things a second life. So
Yeah, I mean, and for me, I love having some basics that I can just wear year after year and season after season, but I like variety. I get bored with certain things. I'll wear something and at first I'll love it, but then I'll realize that I just don't wear it anymore. And trying to force myself to wear it isn't really the solution. And, donating stuff to the thrift shop isn't a great option either because most of that stuff doesn't get resold. So, I love the idea of swapping because it's like a win-win for everybody. I get something new, somebody else gets something new. We have a really sustainable way to purge the stuff that we really don't wear. So thank you. Thank you so much. It's a labor of love for sure.
yeah, I bet. I know.
Okay, so that's really helpful because, yeah, I've been kind of, wondering like, oh, it's starting to look a little dingy, but I love that I've had this for a few years now and it is starting to wear into my body. Sorry, you can like see my
Yeah.
elbows there. It's getting softer.
Hmm.
So it's like, oh, that's what I want in a denim jacket. I want it
Yeah.
to have that kind of worn in feel, which is really fun. Thank you for that tip. Okay, so you've obviously worked for denim brands that are very focused on churning out lots of styles all the time. you know, and I have so many mixed feelings because on the one hand, I understand that like over time, just like I personally get bored, people like a little change, right? So like a change in style can happen. What are your thoughts about that in terms of, obviously from a brand perspective when you're creating styles, and then also, for just the average person that is wanting to have a good pair of jeans that they can wear for a long time. What's your advice or your thoughts about denim trends?
Yeah. Love that question. Because, just going back to the classics is kind of my motto. I want something that season after season I'm going to be able to wear. It's a hard one, right? Because eh, let's be real, like capitalism, like a trend comes out and a company brand wants to capitalize on that. And so it's a really tough thing to fight in the end. Like as a brand, I'm not going to be coming out with any flares, something like that. Like I'm sticking to like slim, straight trucker jacket, short coat. Those are things that year after year after year, decade after decade have been around and
Yeah.
will continue to be around. So I'm trying to focus on things that are more of a like classic staple, with, you know, a couple things that I'm going to be offering that have like a little extra like flair to them, but aren't so, you know, you won't be able to look at it and be like, oh, that was so last season. And so yeah, that's kind of my motto. I being at a place like Levi's, you know, you're really you're taught to kind of have this zeitgeist of what to think for the future, you know, what is going to be in like a year and a half from now, and you know, shopping the market and seeing what, you know, other people are doing, and really trying to think for the future. And I, you know, it's hard because as a designer, you kind of do need to think of like what is next. But at the same time, um, why can't I be a brand that is just about the classics? Like I I have no problem with that. And we'll see how well it does. But yeah, I think there is a problem with that because we're all kind of like, what's next? What's new? I want something different. And I think that I can offer things like that by way of different types of fabrics and different weaves, and you know, getting creative in that way, and trying to stick and not have a silhouette that people are ultimately going to want to not wear in a year or two. Um, I just, yeah, it makes me sad, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that I hope that your brand flourishes and does really well. I love the concept behind it. I mean, I think that that really is how more brands should be thinking. You know, this constant turnover of fashion trends is just out of control. I mean, it's just so fast. And to your point, it really is all about capitalism. It's not, it's about making money. Fashion trends are a marketing scheme to get people to shop more so that brands can make more money. It's really, that's the whole point of it all. I mean, yeah, there's the fun, creative side of it, which is the part that I love, and I'm sure is the part that you love as a designer, right? Like fashion can be fun, a fun way to express yourself, but it's like companies have just taken it too far. So I love hearing that you are focusing on, you know, these classic silhouettes that really never go out of style, and, you know, creating pieces that people can have in their wardrobes for years and years to come. That really needs to be the direction that we as society move into. I read a stat from the British Fashion Council the other day that there's enough clothing on earth right now for the next 6 generations of people. It's like, what? You know, and overproduction is such a big deal. Brands are overproducing, people are overconsuming. So much clothing is winding up in landfills or being incinerated. It's just, it doesn't make any sense. It's just absolute insanity.
Yeah, it's out of control. And I think that's another reason I haven't quite gotten to the kind of educational um point of why I wanted to do this brand, was to try and educate people, or at least empower them to ask questions. Like if you can't like not buy something from a, you know, a Zara or a, you know, an H&M or whatever, start asking the questions of, okay, this was made, you know, where? Okay, it was made from cotton. Where do you know where the cotton was grown? Do you like if we start asking stuff like this and we don't know the answers, it's not good, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like I think I read somewhere that 20% of the cotton that is used in the fashion industry is grown in China, And 84% of that cotton is grown in regions that utilize basically slave labor to grow it. And then let's not even talk about the factories, right? So it's just, it's a huge, aside from sustainability, there's an ethical thing that is very wrong in the fashion industry. So I want to empower people to start asking the questions and, feel good about what they're buying and what they're giving their money to. It's things that I hope that consumers will start doing, so we can make that number go down. Geez, 6 generations, like that's so much clothing. And yeah, it's just wild. It's wild. And it's hard to be a part of an industry that is so wasteful. And here I am, like, trying to tout like sustainability and all these things, but ultimately I'm making product, right? So it's this weird juxtaposition of and fine line of feeling like a hypocrite, but also trying to be at a place that, like, well, it can be done right, like that's the point of this, is it can be done right. So yeah.
So you mentioned worker conditions. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about, your workers, the people that are kind of helping make your products. Yeah, tell us a little bit about that as well.
So that's been a long and kind of wild road, because this is something I was kind of going to share and save for a blog post, but hey, why not my first ever podcast? I was working with a factory that I had worked with for years prior to even starting Deco Denim. And it started to just, like, little by little things would happen that I was like, this is weird. And it would be like the wrong fabric being used on a sample and being told that, I didn't know what I was talking about, but this is your fabric. And what do you tell? And I was like, am I going crazy? Like, what's going on? And slowly it turned into, like, that really shady things were going down. Well, fast forward, the only thing that I pre-produced was my tote bags. Everything else I'm making to order, because overproduction, don't want to overproduce. Doesn't make sense financially, and it doesn't make sense from a sustainability standpoint. And so I had these tote bags made. They all came to my apartment, and I was really nervous to open the boxes. And a week later, after getting them, I opened the boxes and I start going through them, and I was like, oh my God, these are awful. Like, pocket bags sewn in, like, crooked, and start-stop stitches, and labels sewn on crooked. Like, it looked like and not to make a bad joke, but it looked like a 9-year-old, learned how to sew for the first time and was, like, making these. And I'm not insinuating that child labor made them, but it was bad. And so I shipped them all back, and I was like, I can't, this is just weird. Like, I'm being gaslit. I'm getting really bad product. And so I went down to LA and I showed up sight unseen, picked up all my stuff. He tried not letting me take my stuff. And I was like, this is fine. I paid for it. Like, you don't own my fabric or my hardware or any of this stuff. And it's like, well, you haven't paid. And I go, you sent me product that's all messed up and you're fixing it right now. Like, why am I going to pay in advance for that? I'm not going to not pay you, but just give me good product. All right. Long story short, get all my stuff, move it to a new factory. And I get a message on Instagram, and a guy comments and in Spanish, and I translate it, and it was like, it's so happy to see how far these bags have come. And I was like, oh, how sweet. Like, that's nice. And wrote him back. And then I got a message in my DMs, or no, he wrote another message and was like, it's been an honor and a privilege to have sewn these bags. And I'm like, okay, you're the guy that like messed up all my bags. Like, who are you? You know? And so I DM'd him and was like, hey, where do you work? You know? And he says, and we carried on back and forth. Thank goodness for Google Translate, because I took Spanish in high school, but I don't have it. I'm not good at it anymore. And come to find out, he was making all the bags out of his house by himself. And I was like, that's not what I signed up for. Like I was told a factory was going to be making them. So I started asking the questions. How much were you paid? Were you paid by piece? And he was like, yeah, I was paid by the piece. And I'm like, okay, well, now this is not ethical. So, what in the world, So now it's hard because like this is likely happening to other people. And I wasn't aware of it until thankfully this guy reached out to me on Instagram. So that was a really tough thing to swallow, because I unknowingly was a part of something that I don't agree with and I don't stand for. So thankfully I left that factory. The current factory that I'm at is amazing. They are known for paying their workers so well that they don't leave. They don't want to leave. They've got a good gig and they want to stay there. So I'm really, really happy to have found them. And yeah, I'm really happy that I left the place I was at, because I thought that I was going to be with them for the long term,
Mm-hmm.
And I don't, yeah, because it's not only unethical, but it's illegal now in LA. They passed a law making sure that that workers aren't paid that way, because it ultimately, what it does is it's incentivizing a worker to make something as quickly as possible because they want to get that money, but things take time. So if you're only producing something that takes, let's say a couple hours to make, and you're only getting paid by the piece, like it's not a livable wage, And so yeah, it's been really tough to find a place that I trust, that can do good work, and that I know is treating its workers well. So it's a hard road, and that was wild to me, because I thought that was only stuff that happened overseas. Like that's part of the reason I wanted to make everything in the US, And so to be hit with that realization was kind of like eye-opening and a really tough pill to swallow. That, oh my God, that's happening here too. So it's wild. But it honestly, having experienced that also made me realize that there are, fair trade certified factories overseas, and there are a lot more RAP certified, factories that, I part of me was like very gung-ho about being all made in the US. And it's leading me to wonder, like, well, if, there are places that have to get this certification because they are for sure treating their workers right, then there's no problem to me with that. So I don't know. It's kind of it has me questioning, like, well, maybe I don't
It's
So
complicated, and I know that it can be expensive to get fair trade certification as well. So, even if something doesn't have the certification, it doesn't mean that the practices aren't the way that they should be. But thank you for sharing that story. I mean, it sounds like so many things that you as a designer manufacturing your own product, so many things that you have to go through, and being new to having your very own brand. It's like, obviously, I think most brands have to go through some of those experiences. And then, if you find out that something isn't the way that you want it to be, you're going to make, better choices as best as you can. I love that you are thinking about the wages of the garment workers. I mean, I think that's really important. It's like, as a consumer, I don't even like that word, but as somebody who buys stuff, I care about that as well. What are your thoughts about, are you aware of all of the heat that Levi's is getting right now because they won't sign the accord to ensure that their workers are getting paid fairly? And, what are your thoughts about that, especially having worked at Levi's for as long as you did?
yeah, so I have been looking or following that, and it is interesting because part of me is just like, sign the thing, like just sign it and show that like you are, doing what you claim. Like that's all you gotta do, Um, and then this is kind of and why I think they're not is is not because I don't think that they're paying their workers fairly. I believe that they probably are. Um, However, they have their own kind of like system in place, their own like certification, basically. It's kind of like their own like gold standard. And so I think it's more of a like, it's almost like this like ego thing, well, we don't need to because we have our own certification, so why we shouldn't have to, like I
Mm-hmm.
think that is kind of what it is. Like, I'll give you a for example. They years back when I was there, so this is a long time ago, used a factory in San Francisco to make some samples. And before they would even have any sampling done there, they went in with their big checklist of all the things that needed to be marked off in order for them to use the factory, because they wanted to make sure that they weren't using a factory that supported anything less than what they stand for. So, but yeah, at the same time, I'm kind of like, just sign it. Like, but yeah, yeah, it's a weird, like, I'm sure, bureaucracy thing and ego thing, and yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you did mention that there was a lot of bureaucracy there, even when, back when you worked there. So I'm sure if that's part of the culture. So thank you. I always love a good fashion love story. And I'm wondering, and I know this might be a hard question to answer, but do you have a favorite piece in your closet? And if so, what is it and what do you love about it?
Um, yeah, I think it is a very hard question. You're absolutely right on that, because I have collected a lot of stuff over the years. I too, like you, hate the word consumer because, yeah, I've definitely consumed. But I also don't get rid of things. I save them forever, like way too long. I've got like concert tees from 1999 type of stuff, Um, but my absolute favorite right now is actually what I'm wearing right now. This is vintage Calvin Klein sport. I'm pretty sure it's like early 90s. What I love about it is it's kind of like these, like, it's baggy, but it's a shorter, like, kind of
Mm.
crop. And It's 100% cotton. I'm pretty sure that it is like an indigo dyed yarn, so it has like a nice wear to it and will continue to wear. And my other favorite is underneath, actually. I know you only asked for one, but this is an indigo dyed tank top from Imogene and Willie. I wear it all the time. Like it's kind of part of my uniform at this point. So those are my faves.
Very cool. What's inspiring you right now?
Oh my gosh. Right now, I I just watched this documentary on Bowie about the last 5 years of his life. And I was so inspired by that afterwards, because one of my best friends is like, she loves Bowie, and I was like, yeah, he's cool, I know some songs. And for some reason in the last few years I've just gotten kind of into learning more about him, and he's just very creative. And I loved his kind of like outlook on life, um and his music is beautiful. And so it was just a really, I thought, cool documentary. And then I just ordered a bunch of these books about denim that I'm about to like break into, that are really inspiring me before even like cracking the book open. I know I'm gonna find some good stuff in there. So yeah.
Awesome. What are the books on denim you're about to read?
Genes of the Old West, Blue Blooded, and The Rebel's Wardrobe.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I'm excited. I know, denim nerd alert.
Oh, and you mentioned that you had some pieces to show us
Oh
on
yeah,
hand.
yeah. Yeah. So next week, or I don't know when this is going to air, but on the 14th of April, I am going to launch some t-shirts and a sweatshirt, as well as some dad hats and a zipper pouch.
Okay.
It's just like a whole thing, so I can like quickly go through. But what's cool about the t-shirts and the sweatshirt is they are being indigo dyed by hand by a woman up in Sonoma County. And the t-shirts are 100% Pima cotton, which is one of the strongest staple cotton yarns out there. And it's known not only for its durability, but its softness. So I'm doing 3 different color t-shirts. So we've got a natural. Ooh. I'm doing a long sleeve as well. So we've got this blue.
Beautiful.
Probably not the best. I don't know how far to go back.
I can see it.
And I'm doing a camel, which is really cool because the indigo kind of turns this kind of like tealish color. And then I'm doing this 16-ounce hoodie. And it is like beefy. It is the strongest, heaviest hoodie that I have ever seen. And 100% grown in the US cotton, made in LA, dip dyed up in Sonoma County, on the sweatshirt. And the tees are actually made in Peru, at a fair trade certified facility. So that is cool. And then I've got dad hats. I'm doing this one, which is a jacquard. And I'm doing a reverse denim one. So this is the back side of the denim.
Neat.
I'm doing a patchwork jacquard. They're also lined, by the way. So they're fully lined. And last but not least, I'm doing just a straight denim one with natural lining. Yeah, and two more products. Then we've got a zipper pouch. And what is amazing about this zipper pouch, not only like does it hold a whole bunch, but this was made from all the leftover fabric from my tote bag cut. I happened to be down there when they were cutting, and I made the mistake of not looking at the mini marker before they cut, which is basically like the puzzle of all the pieces and how the pattern is laid out for them to cut. And there was a huge amount of waste. And I was like, okay, well, I was going to donate this anyways, but like I should repurpose this. So what can I do to repurpose these pieces? And the zipper pouch was the answer.
Cool.
So yeah, so lots of stuff coming. And eventually jeans and jackets. I just, hit a hiccup with factories and needed to make sure that I was in the right place. And that kind of put a hold on what is already taking so long to create. It's wild, but I will get there. Yeah. So that's what I got coming.
I love it. Thank you for sharing those items. They look really cool. And I love that you're also taking stuff from the cutting room floor and repurposing it and making other stuff with it. And that's the kind of, perspective and attitude that fashion brands need to have if we're going to have a sustainable future, right? And also have cute stuff to wear.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I always end with this question. I think a lot of people have a lot of climate anxiety these days. I don't know if you saw the recent IPCC report, but every time one of those comes out, it's just, this dire information about, how we as humans need to take the climate crisis more seriously if we're going to, not hit 1.5 degrees warming and all of this stuff that just, I know that even though I read a lot about it, I still sometimes get overwhelmed thinking about it and wondering like, oh, how are we going to surpass this or get through this? And I always like to ask, what's keeping you feeling optimistic about the future?
Yeah, I think what's keeping me optimistic right now in this point in time is thinking about what I'm creating, not to like go back to me. And that sounds so self-centered, but like I'm hoping that there are going to be more brands that try to adhere to slow fashion and sustainability and focusing on trying to help customers, however you want to word it, to ask the questions of where their stuff is made, to buy less and buy better. And so I'm really focusing on that piece for the brand and how I can try and get more of that messaging out there. And that's kind of keeping me a little more hopeful, aside from doing the things like compost and, like reusable water bottles and stuff like that. Like that's, a very small drop in the bucket in the grand scheme of things. Right. And yeah, climate anxiety is absolutely real. And being a designer with the layer of guilt that goes along with it is also very real. So it's all about how you can offset it in a like meaningful and actual way, right? Instead of like using these words and not doing anything to back it up, aka greenwashing, right?
How can people find you?
You can find me at decodenim.com. Deco as in Art Deco and denim as in denim. And you can find me on Instagram at deco.denim. Somebody else has Deco Denim and they don't do a single thing with the account. Can you believe it? It drives me bonkers when that happens. And I'm on TikTok too, but don't ever post there because I haven't gotten the hang of it. So yeah, those are the places you can find me.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, it has been such a pleasure talking with you today. Thank you so much for sharing your journey as a designer and creating your own brand with keeping sustainability and ethics in mind. I really applaud all of those efforts that you're making, and I will definitely have to keep in touch.
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you for listening to the Swap Society podcast. Swap Society is an online clothing swap for women and kids that makes it easy and affordable to mix up your wardrobe sustainably. We're a growing community of women across the USA who are creating positive change by swapping our clothes and slowing down our fashion consumption. We would love to swap with you. If you're interested in joining, you can sign up at our website. Learn more at www.swapsociety.co. That's swapsociety.co. You can find the show notes for each episode on our website. Please get in touch with us on social media too. We're on Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, and YouTube for the video version of this podcast at Swap Society. Music is by Joel Korlitz and yours truly. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Please help us spread the word by subscribing, leaving a rating and review, sharing on social media, or simply telling a friend. We really appreciate your support. Have a wonderful day, and remember to swap before you shop.